Morning, everyone. We're just going to wait for a minute to let the attendees log in, and then we will be starting the session. So, Honorable Textile Commissioner, Ms. Ruprashi ma'am, distinguished panelists, webinar participants, and proponents of sustainability, a very good morning to all. My name is Abhishek Jani, and I head the Fairtrade India project. On behalf of the organizers, Center for Social Markets, Fairtrade India project, and Fiber to Fashion, it is my privilege to welcome you all to the webinar, Sustainability in Action, Exploring Circularity and Sustainable Solutions in the Textiles Industry. This webinar has been organized with the support of the Switch Asia program of the European Union government, working on United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 12. The goal is aimed at supporting a transition to sustainable production and consumption practices across Asia and the world. To provide some context, I would like to share a brief introduction about the organizers of this webinar. Center for Social Markets is a not-for-profit organization working to create a more environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable society. Its main areas of focus include promoting sustainable agriculture, climate action, and responsible business practices. CSM is undertaking several programs to promote sustainability in food and textile sector in India. Fairtrade India project is associated with the Fairtrade International Network and is a sustainable and ethical platform for consumers, institutions, businesses, and pharma organizations in India. In the textile sector, working across the value chain from farm to factory, Fairtrade India promotes the adoption of sustainability practices and the sourcing of sustainable Fairtrade certified raw material. And finally, Fiber to Fashion has been a forerunner serving as a single-stop solution for the textile, apparel, and fashion industry, carving a niche for over 2 decades. With a strong global presence and widespread reach in the industry, Fiber to Fashion is a world leader in facilitating businesses with critical and accurate industry information, innovative brand-building solutions, as well as market research insights for the textile industry. Fiber to Fashion is a name synonymous as a knowledge disseminator that delivers exactly what matters to the industry and businesses in the textile industry. So it has been really exciting to work in this partnership and collaborate to bring together this webinar on promoting sustainability. The textiles industry has been coming under growing scrutiny for its environmental and social impact. Factors such as growing consumer awareness, accelerating climate change, the effects of which are visible to all, increasing regulations for the industry in international markets and in India, new reporting requirements on environmental, social, and governance reporting, or better known as ESG reporting, and business responsibility and sustainability reporting, or known as BRSR reporting in India, are all prompting a call for faster and greater implementation of sustainability practices in the textile industry. So keeping a focus on this need for transition and a need for the textile industry to implement practical business case-led sustainability solution, this webinar has been organized. During this webinar, industry pioneers, leading sustainability practitioners, textile manufacturers, and sustainability innovators will provide practical insights and solutions on sustainability in action. To achieve this transition towards greater sustainability, all stakeholders need to play a proactive role. And on its part, the Government of India and all the state governments are key stakeholders to accelerate the adoption of sustainability practices. So to inaugurate the webinar, we have a message from the Honorable Textile Commissioner of India, Ms. Ruprashi ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for addressing this gathering.
Hey, everybody. I'm happy to be part of this webinar on sustainability in action, exploring circularity and sustainable solution in the textile industry. I've been requested to put the context wherein how do we in India look at sustainability and what are the perspectives government and the textile value chain has on the issue. Before getting into the subject, I would like to just have few pointers for all the participants here. As would be aware, textile represent a domain which meets not only our basic and safety needs, but also esteem needs of humanity, if we go to the Maslow's hierarchy of human needs pyramid. In fact, the modern industrial revolution owes itself to Spinning Jenny by James Hargreaves in 1764. And hence, textiles are at the foundation of modern market-led production, consumption, and the modern state, which is constantly evolving in search of balance and fair market play. However, like other modern industries, more demand has also resulted in adversely impacting the environment, like other industrial developments. And hence the concern which may impinge on sustainability on the planet for the enterprise and for the world. Some of the alarms which we keep listening to, I thought it is worthwhile to repeat them. World Bank study says that textile industry is responsible for 20% of the global water pollution. UNEP poses issue to 9% of microplastic pollution. UNFCCC reviews 1.2 billion tons of greenhouse gases world over are attributable to textiles. UNEP also looks at 8,000 chemicals which we use, of which in the textile value chain, we are aware of only 20% and their effects. UNIDO estimates 5 million tons of chemical usage in India, including salts, dyestuffs, etc. Ellen MacArthur has discomfort with loss of value by increase and less use volumes. Fashion for Good estimated 8.5% of textile waste accumulation in India. The apparel industry also has a high consumption rate of plastic, using 342 million barrels of petroleum, equating to 1.35% of global consumption, to create synthetic fibers used in clothes, that is polyester and nylons. Of the 32 billion garments that are produced each year, 64% end up in landfill. We have certain interesting imaginations which also alarm to us that every 7 minutes, an equivalent of Mount Everest in height of clothes is thrown in landfills. So if you stack 12 months worth of fashion landfill, it would reach 613,000,000 meters high. Now, these alarms are only to underline that the problems are there and we need constant multi-pronged approach to contend. Not that one has to feel defeated in front of these challenges. Before going to address the problems, I would like to say that it is important to understand the complexity of manufacturing process of textile value chain. My esteemed colleagues on the webinar may know more deeper, more wider and historical approach. However, few of the basic things which I would like to underline before we get into, and I expect other panelists to add on to the problem solution paradigms. We use various fibers, natural and man-made. We have a long value chain from farm to final good. We have industry which is spread in clusters in case of India specifically, which is historically grown. The margins at each point are either thin or are dependent on the previous point. The cost variables have technology as a very, very high cost element. We have energy cost from manufacturing to logistics, which add on to the load on the system. Wage cost, which is important factor in production and hence importance of how we use our human resource in the process. Demand of basic need is continuing to grow. Yesterday, we had one spiritual leader to our Chintan Shiva, and he also underlined that this is a sector where demand is not going to go down. Now, within that 0.5% increase year on year of the population, even at the basic level, we will need a certain volumes to be continued to be produced. And hence, it is the distribution of demand, supply chain variables, and value return variables that would play a crucial role in changing dynamics of the benefits as well as harms to humanity. In case of India, and I'm sure wherever we are getting into value added, textiles remain one of the largest livelihood support providers also, second only to agriculture. In this problematic, we should look at it that due to wage cost differential, there has been a historical shift of production from developing to the lower developed countries. And herein the problem of sustainability of enterprise also comes up. This also would underline the obligations on the part of various stakeholders when we have to address the cost of changing the processes for overall improvement. Before I go to the responsible production as a problematic, which is part of our sustainable development goal, in my view, what is required to look at a responsible production hovers around water management and energy management and people management. These are obviously being packaged as differential performance indicators through ESG. However, how do we perceive and operationalize it for our textile industry, which is reasonably medium, small, and micro enterprise for India? On the demand side, markets need to achieve transparency, demand pull for these global concerns, and how do we incentivize recycling, EPRs, that is extended producer obligations, responsibilities, and maybe even getting into extended consumer responsibilities. The challenges for textile value chain in terms of decarbonization, desalinations, look at two aspects. One is the input management, whether it is water, chemicals, energy. Two, how to treat output, which is water, again, chemicals, recycling, upcycling, logistic, end of life management, etc. Some of these changes are fairly capital intensive and hence require deployment of resources. And when it comes to deployment of resources, I look up to partnership from the industry, from the financial systems, from the institutional support to ensure that textile value chain remains sustainable and is on the right path of responsible production. The questions would be whether one size would fit all. Is reducing volume enough? Or is it important to make process more efficient? Making the process more efficient needs to be combined with maybe recouping, recycling, or reuse till the end of garment. All these words are oft repeated in a lot of webinars. But do we really internalize them? Not only webinars, a lot of interactions. How do we take it forward from our respective positions, whether it is governance, regulation, or the industry? We do have positive green shoots. We are seeing that there is a shifting consumer sentiment. There have been studies by Deloitte as well as by McKinsey, which show that the next generation is more amenable to look at responsible production and would like to ask more questions before going into reckless consumerism. It is also heartening to see that brands are themselves getting into renewable energy sources, zero waste, reducing transport emissions, prioritizing electric, non-renewable energies, prioritizing green certification, etc., etc. Though unfortunately, in some of the cases, we did come across some of the greenwashing. So we need to up our vigilance as service providers to be ensured that in the name of giving a sustainably produced, a responsibly produced product. One is not just trying to achieve a certification, because certifications are means to an end and not the end themselves. Now, what we need to do is an opportunity for creating enabling and facilitative ecosystem through the brand pull. We need to, if there is any increase in cost, then I would look forward to the sourcing brand to take care, because it is not possible that all the ancillarization units can on their own convert all the processes as desired in this, specifically now when the demand scenario is low. The reinvestment opportunities require a lot of support. In India case, at macro level, we have already taken positions on climate change. We have at the national level 8 missions, and our Honorable Prime Minister has also launched Mission Life Cycle for Environment in 2022. Why I mention it is that the green certificates, green credits, which are being thought of by our allied ministry, we look forward that our industry should be able to use it well, basis their good water usage or better energy usage in the process. At policy level, we look at various action from the Ministry of Textiles. It is to look at if there could be, we could facilitate incentivize credit for responsible production covering water use, energy, chemical efficient processes, by looking at supporting the processing segment of the textile industry. At program implementation level, we are trying to engage with center, state, even local governments to look at how to mainstream the concerns in textile production. We also look forward to interface with regulatory incentives, even the financial sector incentives, in terms of obligatory use of under ESGs. We look for innovative finance in approaches with World Bank. We started some work on possibilities of looking at wastewater reuse also, so that it adds on to the balance sheet of the producing unit and enables them to, it enables a more responsible unit to get better returns from a very, from all the initiatives they take to augment or contribute to the sustainable production. We also look at advocacy. On supply side, we look at raw material efficacy through regenerative and innovative material sourcing. Now, we look at that it should not be just a limited thing of recycling a product. I need to look at it that whatever fiber we are using, whether it is natural or man-made, whether it does help at the form level or at the process level, we can make the process more compliant to the concerns of environment. Regenerative farming methods would help promote climate change mitigation and adoption. Following some of the practices which we also have in our real code for cotton can restore the balance for the land. We also are looking forward to alternative source of fibers. Though they would be small in quantity, we need to see that how do they help the industry get remunerative returns, maybe through a niche market. We look forward to biotechnological advances wherein fiber can be taken out from the waste. We can take out dyes from the waste. We are also looking at Himalayan fibers. We are looking at recouping dyes from the product. We are looking at, so these are all what we, when I say, these are a kind of combined effort at various levels. Our textile research institutions are working. Our textile industry is working, can we synergize our effort on R&D to actually translate it for the returns for the value chain. Another issue which we would look forward is how do we bring in more process efficiency? On one side, we look at integrating the processes and making our Mitra Park as more climate efficient zones, which is obviously the big dream. However, can we do something about our existing clusters in terms of facilitation of efficient technology, wet processing, getting into ZGSC compliances, waterless dyeing, saltless dyeing, maybe even getting into systems of washing in a way with new nitrogen chamber-based indigo dyeing, maybe something which Bharpa Atomic Research has also done is through a nanofiltration technology, wherein we can actually try to reach even hopefully a potable water after treating the textile effluents. The critical factor, we need to ensure that our labor is required for sustainability of enterprise. On the brand side, we see that brands are prioritizing their workers' right. From our side also, from the governance side also, we are also looking at that we could have frameworks like where the same data can be shared and they can be rating through a calibration, maybe something like we had discussions with Texprosil and others on how to make SLCP, the factory certifications, etc., less costly and more sustainable for a long value chain. Now, in terms of use of digitalization from spinning to manufacturing, can be designed to reduce waste? Again, this will be part of input management. Can we get into collection and recycle? We look at collection recycle as hopefully also generating a lot of micro enterprises, tying up with urban local bodies. It can actually give a lot of livelihood options. We can have assurance of the processes through a lot of certifications. Now, certifications, I do have certain issues in terms of it should not be becoming a service generator for service sector, but it should feed in for our textile industry. Through Textile Committee, one of our agencies, we have trained more than 24,000 personnel to enable entities get into environmental aspects. And I'm told that the same personnel or liaising with more institutes, we can make more of our entities Scope 3 compliant. On the demand side, what we do, what you do, what all of us do, maybe we started with UNEP, we are doing with UNIDO, is looking at a demand which is not unrealistic, at the same time, which looks at not high end of consumerism, but more sustainable and responsible production. Circularity is a word which should also come out of its intellectual domain, and we should help our small and medium enterprises to look at how they can make their processes in the value chain, and primarily from fiber to fiber circularity, how can we involve them. Internationally, we have market innovations in terms of rental fashion, second-hand market. I'm sure our new generation itself is pretty high on it, and maybe governance need not really get into it. One is seeing a healthy use of media, social media by new generation for reducing the volumes that are produced by getting into pre-loved kind of domain. So I would like to sign off with some commitments to ourselves, and I would look forward from other speakers that we all need to commit to the idea. Now, we don't need to debate the idea. We need to commit resources. We need to commit to betterment of human resources. We need to commit to collaboration on technology. We need to facilitate credit flow, financial, institutional support for this change, and across the value chain. For sustainability of value chain, integrating sustainability of enterprise. Today only we had a discussion with GIZ Germany to look at sustainability definition and adoption for specific concerns, even in India. So I believe that we need to find our solutions, and hopefully our solutions will supplement and integrate with global solution in all letter and spirit. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ruprashi ma'am, for your encouraging and supportive message. Indeed, it is with your leadership and the leadership of the government that the industry will be able to undertake a faster adoption, sustainability solutions, and I dare say India could become a global leader and a global hub for sustainable textiles manufacturing. And we will now move over to the next session. So over to Shilpi from Fiber to Fashion.
We now move to our final session of our webinar on sustainability standards in textile industry. In this session, we will have a panel discussion on building the business case for sustainability standards. It is my pleasure to invite the session chair, Mr. Abhishek Jani, along with the panelists for the session, Dr. Binay Kumar Chaudhary. Mr. Abhishek Jani is the Chief Executive Officer of Fairtrade India Project. Fairtrade India is a part of the Fairtrade International Network for building more sustainable agri-based value chains. Working across the textile value chain from farm to factory, Fairtrade India promotes the adoption of sustainability practices and the sourcing of sustainable Fairtrade certified cotton. We also have on the panel Dr. Binay Chaudhary. He is the Chairman, Control Union India. Control Union India is an international organization with presence in over 70 countries that has been providing assurance frameworks in various commodity markets since 1920. So to start the session, over to you, Mr. Abhishek.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'd like to start by welcoming all our attendees, our distinguished guests, to this session on sustainability standards in the textile industry. There are literally hundreds of sustainability standards which are relevant to the textile industry, right from the raw material, be it synthetic, be it natural, to what happens in the production processes, the environmental impact, the social impact, understanding the conditions in the factory, even on waste management. This can sometimes get quite confusing, quite overwhelming. If I was to speak in the context of Fairtrade and the network, the Fairtrade International Network that I represent, we have two sustainability standards ourselves. One, the Fairtrade Cotton Standard, which cover the raw material and the sustainability practices happening at the farm level, looking at the cultivation of cotton, looking at the working conditions on the farm, looking at better remuneration for the farmers and their cooperatives. And then taking that into the production systems, looking at parameters like traceability and looking at social indicators. We also have a Fairtrade Textile Standards, which is looking at better production practices in the factories from a workers' rights perspective, from a working conditions perspective, from looking at what is happening on the environment and social parameters in the factories. But at Fairtrade, actually, we ourselves say that only those businesses and organizations who have a very clear business case for taking up the certification should apply for it, right? And that, in essence, is what is going to be the objective of our session today. We want to provide certain headlines, we want to provide certain overviews of all the different certifications which may be relevant. We will not get into specific details, but talk in a broad context of the different aspects of sustainability which are covered in the certification modules. But critically, we are also hoping that we will spark the thought process on what are the different business cases and how businesses can start navigating through these space of Fairtrade and other sustainability certifications. Joining me today, it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Binay Chaudhary. Dr. Binay Chaudhary is an institution in himself. He is the chairman of Control Union India. Control Union in India actually is one of the largest certifying bodies for the textile industries. In addition to that, Dr. Binay is also the author of several sustainability standards himself. I'm just going to list out a few which are significant, but I think it would literally take us half an hour just to go through all the accomplishments that he has got. But he's the author of the Global Recycle Standards, GRS, NICE, which is looking at water conservation at farms, Sustainable Viscose, ARM, and many more. So it is really my privilege to have a panel discussion with Dr. Binay. Welcome, Binay, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Abhishek, for your warm welcome. It was my pleasure always, speak on this event of Fairtrade. So thank you for invitation.
Thank you. So, Binay, we will jump straight into the heart of the matter. What, according to you, would you say is the core business case, or what are the significance or the importance of businesses taking up sustainability certifications in the textile industry?
Abhishek, the sustainable standards are gaining more importance in the days which people are talking about. So we believe that sustainable standards are credible assurance system that gives credibility to the stakeholders, consumers, and also the buyers in the networking. However, this also gives a certain kind of premium. In case of Fairtrade, it has given a certain premium. In organic, there is certain premium. And in most of the sustainable standard, it has given a premium, and that premium is distributed throughout the supply chain management. And this process is so complex. So textile is a complex process. As I said, that, it takes the farm fiber or sometimes the synthetic fiber, and sometimes the natural fibers come to the supply chain. And in the supply chain, the processing is also complex with many more processing steps are involved. So the certification is the important steps to give a credible assurance about the products, about the process, and about the technical parameters that is claimed in the standards.
Super. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think, as you rightly said, I mean, there are so many touch points in a textile supply chain. And most of the times we see, not even brands, forget consumers, do not have visibility or an understanding of who all are involved in the supply chain, right? So from that perspective, demonstrating through credible standards and a systems framework, you can communicate to your buyers, you can communicate to your stakeholders, and then the brands can communicate to the consumers about the better practices or the improved practices, whether social, environmental, or economic, which are being followed on the back of those certifications which are taking place. But Binay, I think you touched upon a very important point there. I think this is not only looking at it in the market context. I think that is one of the key parameters for building the business case, whether there is a demand or a requirement from a brand perspective. Maybe they have an ESG claim that they want to fulfill, an environmental social governance claim. It could be on carbon, it could be on social side, right? They want to communicate, use that in the brand marketing or other stakeholder communications. But as you rightly said, this can also become a tool for assurance and risk management for the businesses themselves, right? And I think that is where the new direction for standards and certifications is actually, because there is now a whole host of regulations in India itself. I mean, if you look at it, we have a business responsibility and sustainability reporting requirement, which is already going to be coming in for the SEBI top 1,000 companies. We have other compliance requirements which are already in place on water, on social, and so on and so forth, right? And then there are global compliances, such as in the EU, there is this new regulation called Human Rights and Environmental Due Diligence, which is requiring that the global supply chain is following certain standards of compliance on human rights and environmental sustainability. So I think from a compliance perspective, developing that risk framework, certifications can also help you with that. So if your customers are international, this can help you. And not only help you, they will almost ask for it. Am I right, Binay?
Yes, you are right, and you have already told that the risk management system. So anytime any kind of indicators that come, that whether it is a technical or social or environmental risk, that can be identified through a certification system. So certification system is a guarantee or a confidence that gives a credible assurance to the supply chain partners, including the buyers and consumers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then there are also certifications which also communicate about quality, whether it's on the production side or in the product itself, right? So there are many dimensions to building that business case. Again, it could be getting access to premium markets, getting access to international markets because of something that your buyers there are looking for. It could be the risk assurance framework that Vinay was referring to, where you could also fulfill some of your compliance requirements for India as well as international markets. It could be something that helps you demonstrate that you are committed to quality and committed to good practices in your production systems. And again, that becomes a communications and a marketing tool for your organization itself. And of course, it also becomes a roadmap through which you can follow better practices, right? The idea of the standards is not to kind of lay down the minimum to do, but the very fact that we are talking about sustainability standard means that you can see a roadmap on how you can conserve water, how you can conserve energy. And sometimes there are strong business cases, as you would have heard from panelists today already. There are some strong business cases for following those better energy, water, chemical, and other sustainability practices, right? So I think these are the different dimensions to consider when businesses are evaluating, when MSMEs are evaluating how they need to look into sustainability and what's the relevant sustainability standards and certifications they should go for. But when I was looking it up, there are literally hundreds of certification standards which are out there, right? And Control Union, you yourself kind of work with so many of them. For the interest of our attendees today, could you please help us kind of declutter this and help us understand what are the broad categories in which the sustainability certifications can be understood, and also give us some examples of some of the leading certifications relevant for the textiles industries for these different categories?
Yes. So as you know that the conventional business practices focus on the local legislation and based on the buyer's requirement. So when we practice just a startup which start the business process, they look to the buyer's requirements, the technical parameters, the cost and quality parameters, and based on that he or she build up his business case, and they follow all these local cases with respect to technical, social, and environmental on the local basis. So when the buyers look forward the future of the product, as you said that the product integrity and product transparency and also the product sustainable index is more focused for the buyers while selecting their work activities. So when the MSME, they start thinking about sustainable productions of or sustainable processing, so they find some means easy way to start some accessing some of the standards, which is just maybe a ISO standard to start up to show his system and take to the technical system. So whether they will talk about input certifications, so the dyes, chemical fibers, whether their sustainability is there or not, accessories, these are all inputs they can look for the certification process. And also,
what would be some of the inputs? Sorry, Vinay, for interrupting you. What would be some of these certifications relevant for some of these inputs, which you think are credible and important?
So look into the first input is fiber. So fiber is, you have got natural fibers, you have got synthetic fibers, you have got man-made fibers. So for natural fibers, you can go for organic or recycle or kind of some kind of sustainable standard like regenerative agriculture and BCI, Fairtrade when it comes to social event. But natural fiber has many certifications which touch to the ground of the soil and with the farmers. Similarly, when you talk about a synthetic, then there are a lot of green processing on the synthetic fibers. And when you go to the man-made fibers, where natural fiber is converted chemically and to produce a sustainable fiber, so they look for the sustainable forestry system, sustainable pulping system, that gives a confidential information about sustainability of the man-made fibers. So like this, you come to a fiber, which is one of the important input, almost 40–45% of the work that they have to be involved while getting the fiber into place. Then you take example of inputs like dyes and chemicals. You take example of inputs which are maybe sizing agent, maybe enzymes, maybe auxiliaries. So there are many inputs that is required. Starting from spinning, there is wax. So for everything, you look into the sustainable approach. So somebody is using a conventional wax, they will go for a natural wax, and somebody is looking for a natural dyes instead of synthetic dyes. And if synthetic dyes, we are talking about low impact, less hazard conditions with risk phrase and hazard code. So there are many, you have got JTSC, you have got Cocotex, so there are many standards of sustainability comes while talking about dyes and chemicals or auxiliaries. And you have got, or even GRS also has a process of certifying these inputs. So when you talk about your accessories, which is also part, so accessories is not the button, zipper or some kind of accessories that is used for that. Even the packaging materials and even the labels that is used in the garments. So that are all important to talk about the sustainability, even a sewing thread. So for that reason, how you are going to convert from a untested material or unreported material to a reported material which is of sustainable origin. So these inputs are very, very important. And I was talking about, apart from the input, the processing. So you have got different kind of reactions in the industries while talking about the dye absorptions. And you have got different kind of process. We'll talking about the pollution. So take about of the process of fibers that is going to convert to yarn. So during the conversion of process from one process to another process, so fiber to yarn, yarn to fabric, fabric to a finished product. So many times there are challenges that some fibers are coming up and your environment. So what is the flux of light that you are talking about? And what are the waste energy and water that has been assimilated, and how you are doing a chemical management? So it is talking about the environmental that the workers are working or the machines are implanted. So that is more important while talking about the sustainable certifications. So for environmental, you have already told that you have a carbon reduction program. There are carbon neutral, carbon negative approach, and you have energy reduction program. There are energy which has been converted to natural energies like wind power, solar energies, where people are talking about the energy that has been used from hydro sources or some kind of nuclear or thermal power, which is not sustainable approach. So like this, you can see that the environmental approach. Then coming back to the social approach, you can also see that how the workers are working in the environment. What is the local legislation? What is the livelihood? And in Fairtrade, you have covered many more things beyond the ILO approach. And that gives a strength of sustainable certifications. And any MSME to start the work, they should think on a all-over approach to make their quality management system strong, so that all this sustainable standard has similar approach while exposing their transparency and traceability in giving their data and giving their process, so that this sustainable certification will have a more sustainable index or more sustainable scoring, and that gives the strength of MSME to give their products a value additions, and also give a product footprint, which is the day to talk to their buyers and also to the consumers, and to putting the credible label to give assurance system to the whole supply chain.
Super. Yeah, I think there's a lot that you've just covered there. And as you said, of course, one is looking at it on the footprints and looking at the area of impact of where your production or your raw material is coming in from, be it environmental, social, or economic. And then obviously looking at it from a functional perspective, as you said, in the processing, whether it's in the auxiliary, whether it's in your primary, whether it's in your core production processes, the environmental impact, the water impact, the GHG or carbon impact. So there are many dimensions to that also that come into play, right? So I think, yes, these are the different dimensions. I think what you said at the end is very important, that each organization must chart out a holistic approach with a set of priorities, right? Because it can be very overwhelming. I don't think anybody would expect a business to jump into 10 or 15 different certifications. You would need to start with identifying the areas of where you can create the maximum impact and where your business will also benefit the most. I repeat, we are not just looking at it from a social or an environmental benefit, but also looking at it as how that can marry in with your business objectives as well, right? So covering that, Vinay, what would be your advice to MSMEs or even businesses which are exploring certifications? How do you think they can navigate this in a systematic, phased-wise manner?
As you know that the industry need some kind of incoming products. So while taking incoming products, one should be very much visualize what he's getting inside to the factories or what they're producing on the ground. So many times we just ignored because of the cost and quality. So we compromise the situation. So as you said that everything has a written procedure and everybody has to follow a written procedure, and which is useful for the company to follow it. So many times we have seen that the raw material that has been received inside the factory should have a proper reception check. And that gives most of the sustainable raw material coming inside the factories. Then there are sustainable guidelines, and you know that sustainability has a simple definition for people, product, and profit, and or socio-economical or environmental. So keeping this in view, if we work out our factory with a lot of lights that is naturally available, lot of airs that is coming inside so that we do not pollute the environment, and we make working environment more safe, where the machines are all fitting with proper SOPs, policies, and procedures. And all these places where the product movement is going, whether it is coming to a reception check where the quality and the expectations has been checked, and it comes to a store where it is sustainably stored, and also it comes to a situation where it comes for a processing, and in processing you have got socio-economic conditions that has been met, and further that when it is come to a packing or a quality testing, so you have a testing lab to test that whether the parameters of incoming goods and outgoing goods met the expectation of the buyers or the expectation management. Sometimes by following a proper sustainable procedure or certification, you really go beyond the expectations. So many times we have found that you just follow the procedures, and that save a lot of efficiency. So that increase the efficiency of the manpower, increase the efficiency of the productions, and that saves a lot of time. Time management also is proper. Sometimes we give more the expectation of the buyers and with a less delivered time. So this system will give a credibility and a satisfaction for the MSME sector. And once it is coming out a credible label, so sometimes the level of the company, level of the buyers, and level of the standards. So while talking about the labeling aspect also, we do not talk about any lying, or we do not give anything. So a transparency and credible insurance and credible information system that gives a certain maturity to develop the labels, and those labels are name of the companies. So people fall those things as thinking a tremendous process, but once you develop the SOPs, policies, procedure, follow certain basic principles. As I have showed that the environmental is only 5 or 6 basic principles, and so social is based on ILO principles. So these principles are well written, and technical, the principles are SOPs and policies, and some testing parameters, some reception check, some incoming goods, some outgoing goods expectations. And with this completion, I think all the certification system can be covered. And if you look to the volume of the products and the certification cost and the save in the resources and time, it is actually very mere expenses, or it is sometimes profitable, a profitable sense, to give a credible assurance that the company is going through a ISO procedures, or company going through a sustainable or zero emission procedure, and company is going through a green fiber utilization procedure. So such kind of credibility attract a lot of buyers and consumers to use your products with technology, with innovations, and with sustainable certifications. I suggest that these are all the key parameters for MSME to achieve their goals in a shorter time.
Superb. Thank you so much, Vinay. Always such deep knowledge. So thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I think, if you're looking at it from a business and MSME particularly, who may have limited resources, venturing into sustainability, I think what you've said is very right. We need to look at it in the context of first setting systems and processes and production practices there itself, right? And I'm hoping, this webinar is the start of things, but there'll be other things, and there are many other resources for information which are going to be available, through which you can identify where it could be a business critical activity. It could be actually a demand coming from the market. It could be a compliance requirement. Wherever your first priority needs to be fixed, I would say, you should look at that. And as Vinay rightly said, put in a system in place, a genuine system of change in place. That in itself will then make it easy for you when you start your certification journey. Because the role of certification in many ways is to verify and to help communicate about your commitment to certain practices, right? That cannot happen in isolation from what is happening in the ground. Whether it's energy, whether it's labor, whether it's other chemical use or any other sustainability parameter or carbon. So the starting point has to be to understand where there is the business case for you to start changing and setting a kind of a roadmap for that. And then bringing in the certification so that it brings an added level of communications and credibility to your work. But in many ways, actually, the standards also many of them have ways in which you can improve on your practices as well. So I think that's where it can come in together. For instance, at the Fairtrade textile standards on the workers' working condition on the factories, yes, we are following some of the best practices that we propose, but we are also trying to stretch the market as well as factories to look into things like living income and living wages for the workers, which is obviously quite demanding, but it sets a roadmap for that so that businesses can start committing to that, right? So the idea here is it needs a change in process and practice, and that to go in tandem with your certification. Changing of this process and practice needs to be coming with a clear business case, whether it's business continuity, markets, risk management, compliance. There were so many that we talked about today. And then layering that with the independent verification and layering that with the certifications would help your business get to the right buyers, get to the premium markets, and get also to your other stakeholders, be it the regulators, be it your reporting frameworks. I would suggest that in those of you who are joining us from India, I would suggest that we also look at the government's own BRSR, business responsibility and sustainability reporting framework. I think that's a very, very progressive framework. It really starts talking about a wide range of areas where businesses can start bringing about those changed practices. And then obviously you can layer that up with some of these Fairtrade and other voluntary certifications and sustainability standards. So I hope with that, we've been able to share some very top level overview of how you can navigate this space. I hope we've been able to identify certain key areas where you can build the business case and what are the different certification standards which may apply on the different production aspects or your sourcing aspects in the textiles industries. So thank you so much, Vinay. Really, always a pleasure to have a conversation with you on such important issues. And now to continue the conversation, I look forward to certain Q&As from the audience. So we will now open the floor for question and answers, and request anybody who'd like to, who would have any questions around the topic we've discussed around sustainability standards and certifications, to please type in your questions in the Q&A box right in front of your screen. Yeah, hi, Binay. If you can also turn on your, yes, thank you. Super. So we are getting quite a few questions here. So there are some questions which are very specific to certain scenarios. So Binay, you are an ocean of knowledge, so just would like to tap into that. So Prabhakar has asked, is there any certification model for zero effluent generation?
See, basically, the effluents that comes from various polluting industries, basically a filtration system where ETP is there. So effluent treatment plants. So in the effluent treatment plants, you have got 2-3 process. One is settlement process. Another is a filtration or biological process where you treat the scenario, and the third one is membrane filtration process. So when the final the sediments and water comes, so there are many certifications that comes who talks about the type of the water that is coming out, and there is a evaluation of quality parameters so that you can reutilize those. So zero discharge, they claim on zero discharge of water. And some certification comes on the effluent that is as a pollutant is blocked and measured to the sustainable like bricks, and some goes to the effluent treatment to extract some heavy metals. So there are different processes there. So there are certifications which talks about green effluent systems, and they're all basically based on certain principles of the effluent treatment and effluent filtration systems. So to name few of the things, you can get it many certifications. They are all tailor-made, and government has pollution control board. They have their own certification process where they look into the quality of the filtration system and about the output that is generated.
Great. So are there any strongly recognized certifications here that you would like to recommend?
That's what zero discharge process. There are many certification comes in zero discharge. So basically, the amount of water or the liquid or liquid that you are using should be recycled back. So they talk about recycle and they talk about zero effluent discharge system.
Super, great. And there is another question which is around specifically for spinning processes. What standards should one follow to calculate sustainability or carbon footprint, and is there a certification for that? And what are the factors to consider?
See, most of the carbon footprint is based on the ISO method of 14064, and in there you have got 3 scope. Scope 1, the carbon emission that is happening within the factories, and scope 2 and 3 that comes indirectly emissions that is causing because of your resources. So most of the calculation is done basic scientific method calculations. So you have a lot of softwares which talked about GHG emissions, but the scope is more important. So while looking to the boundary that you have decided to calculate, so that is more important. So while choosing your scope, you should look into, there are many methods to find out your scope and the calculation methods. So I think the basis is IS 14064, which talks about carbon emissions or GHG calculations.
Super, thank you so much. And I think linked to that, there's a question pertaining to scope 2. There's a question about sustainable transportation and supply chain management, as that contributes significantly to GHG. So would the ISO standards also cover scope 2, or are there other certifications?
The ISO standard covers all the scope 3, 1, 2, 3. So 2 is you are right that their fuel usage or the heat values and the emission factor. That is the main calculation. So whether it is related to transport, of course, transport is a major cause. So whether you do where the fuel transmission is direct and the calculation is affected by such kind of transportation, the longer the transportation, more the fuel usage and more the heat value, and that's what the emission factor is more. And also while doing the boilers, many kind of generator system, so these are all inside the factories. So transport is outside factory, which is scope 2 and 3. And while inside the factory is scope 1. So mostly you should be having a conservative approach First, you should fix your inside the factories, what are the emissions and what are the alternative methods to control it. And then you talk about the outside the factories, that how to reduce, like choosing a distance, source of productions and source of transportations, and choosing a better means of transportations. You have railways, you have road transport, some are coming with green energy transport system. So you must look into various method that is available and will be suitable for costs. So cost is important factor while deciding these things. So at behest of your best possible way to choose these resources, you should find cautiously and calculate and slowly make a measurement plan that how you can reduce in future. So you have a step-by-step reduction plan.
Super, thank you so much. There are a couple of questions, and Vinay, please feel free to jump in on this. I just want to take that up. It relates to there being so many certifications. Are there ways in which efficiencies can be brought about? Earlier we heard from the Honorable Textiles Commissioner, and she was referring to the need for there being greater synergies across, standards, and how can we bring that in? So I would suggest, yes, this is something that the industry is recognizing. There is already an alliance called the ICEAL Alliance, where there are different certification standards which are members of ICEAL Alliance, and they are already looking at harmonizing their systems. At Fairtrade, I can already tell you on the social compliance and social compliance indicators in the value chain, we take a lot of reliance on other certification standards like SA 8000, and so we are able to kind of provide a lower cost of certification if there are these kind of if the companies or the factories have these kind of certifications, be it GOD, SA 8000, and other such equivalent ones which are recognized by us. And similarly, there are other standards also which take an equivalence from Fairtrade. Are we there yet? I think far from it. But the industry is recognizing the need for this harmonization, and we're working on it. Vinay, any thoughts on how we can harmonize the standards and certifications?
See, as you know that the world is more of diverse community. So every buyers will think unique approach that how I will differentiate my company with others. So like this, every sustainable approach has got different views that how this sustainable standard is better than other standards to make it popular. So in the days to come, you will find many standards that operates within a system. In my speech, I clearly define you that these are all buyer-based or the country-based approach where sustainability take a views. But in the future days, you will see that the consumer will demand for sustainability. And they will look, the IT system is improving more and more. So you will find a lot of green approach in consumer's mind. And when the consumer is motivated, you will find such approach in buyer's mind, and that's what a community approach will be created. And with that view, synchronization is very much essential. So I told in my previous lecture that you have to make a basic plan on your policies and procedures so that you cover more of the sustainable approach. And that gives you a strength to face any sustainable standards that to be implemented with your industries. Unfortunately, you cannot stop. There are private certifications and there are government certifications. Government certification has a unique approach, and you have got the one man show approach, like it is government, it is country, and that regulation need to be implemented. So there is no second thought of competitions. That is a government approach which has been made with a lot of experts' knowledge. So there we cannot talk about that because this is one approach and it is easy and feasible. But while talking about the private approach, where people think that, these are all something plus approach, like people talk about organic, now people are talking about organic plus. So organic plus fair trade, organic plus regenerative. So such kind of plus approach, wherever it is coming, we should be carefully evaluate what are the standards requirement. And these are all add-ons, and don't treat the certification as a necklace. So basically, the third process of certification is that to make a system which is very sustainable and give you some certain output which is profitable for you. And with that view, I think we should take the approach in a positive way. And as much as we can control and we can convince our buyer that, yes, I'm doing. I gave one example about social approach where ILO is the best. And there are a lot of social standards. Somebody is looking for RAP, somebody is SA8000, somebody Fairtrade. But when you have a Fairtrade standard, so you can have a convinced approach that yes, Fairtrade cover X and Y things, which is also covered by X and Y certifications. So in such cases, you can convince your buyer and you can minimize your certification process.
Super. Thank you so much, Vinay. And there are a whole bunch of other questions again that are coming in, as well as requests from people to connect with you. And what we will do is, if it's okay with you, we will share your email ID, and where required, even connect them directly with you, so that I think people are looking for a direction or specific details for certifications. So we will connect at the end of the webinar with the attendees and directly connect them to the various panelists who've been involved. So thank you once again, Vinay, for that great overview on our sustainability standards for the textiles industry. And I think that will really help businesses who are looking into certifications for demonstrating their commitment to sustainability. And with that, it is now time that we come to an end to this webinar. I'd like to thank everybody who's been with us for now close to 3.5 hours. And I know we can go on. There is a lot of great interaction that has happened, and we really appreciate all the questions and the requests for more information that have come through. We are going to systematically follow up on that. And so please, if we haven't attended to your question, or it was part of the webinar that you missed out, or we had a connectivity issue in the middle, we will be sharing those details. So you will definitely get what you need out of this from us. And we come to the end of this webinar on sustainability in actions, exploring circularity, sustainable solutions in the textile industries. We really hope that these sessions have been useful to get some practical understanding of the different sustainability solutions which can be adopted by businesses in the textile industry in India. On behalf of the organizers of the webinar, I would like to thank all our distinguished speakers for the time and also for the invaluable contribution. I think I know sustainability has been a topic of discussion for a while, but I think there is a huge amount of energy around it now, and bringing in the practical dimensions forward has, as we've seen through the interaction, been quite critical for the industry as well. I would also like to thank our delegates and attendees for participating in this webinar. We hope to stay in touch, and we will definitely be taking aspects of these conversations forward. We also aim to provide a recording and an online link to the entire webinar through our Fiber to Fashion partner website. So you will, in case you want to see parts of the presentations or the discussions, you will be getting an access to that shortly. We have your email addresses as you've signed up for it. And so with that, I would like to thank you once again and hope that you have a great day. Thank you so much, and wish you all the very best.